Welcome to another episode of The Office. We're happy to have you join us. In today's episode, we continue the discussion with Dr. Didacus Jules, Director General of the OECS. We had such an interesting discussion last episode, we felt it necessary to continue. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after the break.
The Office is brought to you by Renwick & Company Limited, multi-graphics powered by Expert Group and the Goddard Catering Group.
The business environment is rapidly evolving. We must continually adapt to remain competitive. At HRWise, we help businesses create and sustain a competitive advantage through their people. Let us help you develop solutions for recruiting and selecting the right talent, improving employee engagement, managing performance, and much more. Realize the true potential of your workforce. Harness the power of your people. HRWise, we partner for success.
I'm often asked, what's the best part of my job? And I'm quick to say, it's the tasty part. The presentation, the cooking, the creativity, the quality. The moment I peek to see another satisfied guest and client in all possible settings. Cutting, biting, sharing, and smiling, knowing our team at GCG events is simply outstanding.
As my guide, I pledge allegiance to my country, St Lucia. I proclaim that I will serve my country and I will defend it with vigor and valor in the pursuit of excellence, justice, and equality for all.
My heart, my home, my St. Lucia. Show your sense of pride and patriotism.
A great deal on my furniture. Great stuff, super strong, best thing on the market.
Your furniture says a lot about your business. For best quality, durability, and style, Global Office Furniture from Renwick is the only choice for any serious business. Don't be fooled by cheap supplies from other commercial houses. Let Global Furniture speak for your business. Think Renwick & Company. Think global, because value is always in style.
Thank you for staying with us. Dr. Jules, in our last episode, you shared your views on the important role that HR plays in our organizations and the need for us to change our mindset and our approach to HR if we really want to see improvements within our organizations and improvement in the level of success that we get. But today, I want to take the discussion a little deeper and talk about human resource development from a national perspective. Do you think that enough emphasis is being placed on human resource development in St. Lucia, at the national level?
Actually, before we go there, it just occurred to me that there's a little more I wanted to say on the role of HR in an organization. We spoke earlier about HR having to have a seat at the executive team level. I think the notion there is treating HR as what we call a business partner. There are a lot of decisions that have to be made in the running of any organization that would be better informed if HR was part of that conversation. I know there are people sometimes who feel that HR should not be, it's a sort of secondary tier level function. But effectively, like for example, at the OECS Commission, HR for me is a high level function. Because a lot of the decisions that we have to make, if we are to succeed as an organization, requires that HR have an input into that process. Not just in the selection of people, but the conversations about the performance of the organization as a whole, the type of targets we need to set, the sort of teamwork that we need to build. Our relations, human relations in an organization like OECS goes beyond just the staff of the commission. It reaches out also to member states, our counterparts in ministries, and how we have many virtual teams that use the technology now to work closely together.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work to be done on that front. To come to your question about the importance of HR in St Lucia, I think in St Lucia generally, we are not treating HR at the level at which it ought to be treated or recognized. We have to understand that at a national level, human resource development is one of the most critical functions that the state has to exercise. And historically, we've made a distinction between HRD and education. And we have to rethink that to see education as part of the whole ecosystem of human resource development.
Right.
You cannot separate your education system, which starts with the socialization of the youth, with the inculcation of knowledge and so on, the creation of knowledge, and separate that at the point where people leave school to then start talking about human resource development after school.
Right.
Education in the 21st century is a function that requires, as we said earlier, constant refreshing. So as a result of that, you have to really think of education as a cradle-to-the-grave function. And you have to put education in a broader context of human resource development, human capacity building. I think it was Sir Arthur Lewis who said that the cure for poverty is not money but education. And therefore, that isn't to say that any education is a cure for poverty. What Sir Arthur was really alluding to is the transformative capacity of education at the level of the individual to have better choices, more choices in life. Prior to us sitting down, I was trying to find a graphic I had done when I worked at CXC that was showing the difference between not having, dropping out of school and having a school leaving certificate, the difference between a school leaving certificate and CSEC, or what people call CXCs, the difference between CXC certification and an associate degree. And there are significant jumps. I mean, when you talk from having no education to having a postgraduate degree, the differential on wage earnings of that could almost reach 1,000%. So education does matter in terms of the range of choices that an individual has.
Right.
Now, in that context, we have to retool at the level of the country. And I'm not just speaking St. Lucia, I'm speaking the Caribbean in general. And that is what some of the countries that have had real transformations like Singapore and Finland have done. You have to retool education so that it's not about turning education now into technical and vocational education. Every aspect has its importance, but you have to retool education so that it is continuous, it provides continuous education. So no matter where you leave off from your formal education, there are opportunities for you at whatever point in your future life to look back into the system, to upgrade yourself. That's what has happened to many Caribbean people who have left, maybe dropped out of primary school, gone to the places like the US, they did their GEDs, they come back several years later with master's degrees or professional qualifications, because there are those opportunities for ongoing picking back up with your education and taking yourself to where you want to go.
Yeah. Well, you served as you served a critical role within CXC, and so I know that you're really passionate about the whole education conversation. But I'm concerned about the direction that our education system is going in, because I've always said that we are not preparing our students for the working environment. We're allowing them to go through a process of schooling, and the focus is always on passing exams. It's not preparing them for life, and it's not focusing at all on the soft skills, or at least not enough on the soft skills, that they will need to survive, you know. And I think this contributes significantly to the problems that we're seeing at the management and leadership levels, where persons lack those soft skills that are so important the emotional intelligence is lacking. And in a lot of cases, the students don't necessarily understand the link between what they're being taught at school and everyday life. But we'll continue that conversation after the break. Don't go anywhere, stay with us, we'll be right back.
I'm often asked, what's the best part of my job? And I'm quick to say it's the tasty part. The presentation, the cooking, the creativity, the quality. The moment I peek to see another satisfied guest and client in all possible settings, cutting, biting, sharing, and smiling, knowing our team at GCG Events is simply outstanding.
A great deal on my furniture. Great stuff, super strong, best thing on the market.
Your furniture says a lot about your business. For best quality, durability, and style, Global Office Furniture from Renwick is the only choice for any serious business. Don't be fooled by cheap supplies from other commercial houses. Let Global Furniture speak for your business. Think Renwick and Company. Think global, because value is always in style.
The business environment is rapidly evolving. We must continually adapt to remain competitive. At HRWise, we help businesses create and sustain a competitive advantage through their people. Let us help you develop solutions for recruiting and selecting the right talent, improving employee engagement, managing performance, and much more. Realize the true potential of your workforce. Harness the power of your people. HRWise, we partner for success.
People are a company's single biggest asset and by far your largest expense. So managing your workforce is no easy task. There's productivity, engagement, talent management, discipline, labor laws, and the list goes on. Now there's a simple way with HRWise. The Office, every Tuesday at 9 p.m. on Choice TV. Get a head start and see how easy HR can be.
Thank you so much for staying with us. So, Dr. Jules, we were talking about the education system before we took a break. And I was saying that I feel like our education system is failing our students and not really helping prepare them for the future. And considering your background with CXC, tell me, what has been your experience? I know you've tried to do certain things to help to address that.
Yeah,
Tell us a
I
little
think
bit.
your perspective is absolutely correct. I don't think we have grasped the full extent of the failure that is happening in the education system. And in some close fora where when I was registrar of CXC and presenting to ministries of education, I tried to make it graphic and real to them and said, if education was a soap factory, we'd have closed it down a long time ago. And the thing is, you see, we have a blame culture in the Caribbean where we always look to pin the blame on somebody else. So teachers have been blamed, parents have been blamed, students have been blamed. When you see failure at the level that we see it in our education systems in the Caribbean, it tells you that failure is systemic. It's not, yes, an individual student may sit 5 subjects and get nothing. But when you, so that's failure at an individual level.
Right.
A better, more diligent student would get 5 subjects. But when you see thousands of students showing that pattern of failure, the problem is no longer just the individual, it's the system. The system is failing. And we have to address those systematic things. Let me just show you how extensive the failure is. A cohort of children enter in Form 1. Now one assumes that if 30 kids enter a class in Form 1 at secondary level, in a good functioning education system, a well-functioning system, 30 of them will reach Form 5, 30 of them will sit whatever is considered to be the suitable number of subjects. And the more of them, of the 30 that get what are considered the adequate or acceptable number of passes will constitute success.
Right.
What happens in the Caribbean, we're not talking St Lucia, but everywhere in the Caribbean, 30 students enter. By the time you reach Form 5, you no longer have 30. That original 30 is not there. It's probably down to 25 if you're lucky, or even 20 of them.
Right.
So that's 20, 10 dropped out. Failure, that's already failure, because it means somewhere along the line they're no longer in the system. Then you have, of the 20 who are in Form 5, and that happens often, some of the schools will decide, I am not sending 4 of you to sit exams because you're going to mess up my record. You will get no subjects.
That's right.
Now, I'm saying a principal should not have that authority to do. So 4 children don't get to sit, so 16 go on. Of the 16 who sit the exam, the number who get 5 or more subjects, which is considered to be the minimum requirements for decent wage labor,
right,
is only about 23% in the Caribbean. So you're talking, I mean, massive failures
throughout the system.
And that cannot be a problem of just teachers or students or parents. It is systemic. And that is why I've always advocated throughout my career the need to fundamentally re-engineer education in the Caribbean. Now, while I was at CXC, we tried to make certain changes because we recognize, in many ways, because of our British academic inheritance, we are very fixated on passing exams and seeing that as the end all, the be and end all. So, and that's not good. That part of it is not going to change. You'd be a fool to think you can change that mindset. So, if people are going to see it in that way, then we ask ourselves, what can we do to make testing more relevant to help achieve the aims that we want to achieve? So if teachers will always teach the test, if we change the way we test, then we force them to change the way they teach. And that's why, for example, in what we call the new generation CAPE subjects, you will see that instead of 40% as in the past, 60% of your final grade comes from projects that you do throughout the year, rather than a do or die one-shot exam.
Right. Yeah.
And again, in terms of content, you now measure things like teamwork. So in measuring in assessing SBAs and so on, you look at the degree of teamwork, the attitudes displayed and so on. So you try to build in the soft skills. And also importantly, you recognize the neurological science shows that there are 7 styles of learning. It's not just reading. It's, some people are tactile. They need to touch and do stuff. Some people are more visual and so on. So the 7 styles are taken into account in the construction of the new syllabi, or as they revise the old syllabi in CXC, so that you cater for the diversity of learning styles in the classroom.
And
hopefully,
make the entire process more impactful.
And hopefully over time this will show results.
Yeah. But understanding that clearly there is an issue with the system, I interpret that lack of attention or lack of focus to address that issue as not having a good enough understanding of the value of human resource development holistically. Because if we saw the need, or if we understood the importance of human resource development from a very early age and the need for us to engender that in our schools and in our organizations, don't you think we would put more emphasis on labor? When I say labor, as in the Ministry of Labor is always Ministry of A, B, C, D, E, and labor. It's always like an afterthought. So I feel like not enough attention is being placed on human resource development at the national level.
Well, it doesn't matter to me how many portfolios are in a ministry. The important thing is how is the portfolio handled and treated. Yeah,
well, I feel like it's not getting enough attention because it's always treated like an afterthought. How much is being put into developing?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The key thing is not the configuration of the ministry, but how the substance of the ministry and how it is done. I think that's because we don't see the big picture. I believe in big picture thinking. We have to understand human resource development has a multi-dimensional impact. And in fact, I'll share with you a slide that speaks to that. If you think from the level of the individual, what is the multidimensional impact of human resource development, to the level of the organization, to the level of the industry, to the level of the economy or society as a whole, right? There are three critical drivers in that process. One driver is what we call a capacity driver. In other words, what does human resource development do from a capacity perspective at that level? So at the level of the individual, it drives mobility. That's what increased human resource capacity does.
Okay, we need to take a break. So let us continue this conversation on the other side of the break. So stay with us, don't go anywhere.
Great deal on my furniture. Great stuff, super strong, best thing on the market.
Your furniture says a lot about your business. For best quality, durability, and style, Global Office Furniture from Renwick is the only choice for any serious business. Don't be fooled by cheap supplies from other commercial houses. Let Global Furniture speak for your business. Think Renwick and Company. Think global, because value is always in style.
I'm often asked, what's the best part of my job? And I'm quick to say, it's the tasty part. The presentation, the cooking, the creativity, the quality. The moment I peek to see another satisfied guest and client in all possible settings. Cutting, biting, sharing, and smiling, knowing our team at GCG Events is simply outstanding.
With God as my guide, I pledge allegiance to my country, St Lucia. I proclaim that I will serve my country with pride and dignity, and will defend it with vigor and valor in the pursuit of excellence, justice, and equality for all.
My heart, my home, my St. Lucia. Show your sense of pride and patriotism.
The business environment is rapidly evolving. We must continually adapt to remain competitive. At HRWise, we help businesses create and sustain a competitive advantage through their people. Let us help you develop solutions for recruiting and selecting the right talent, improving employee engagement, managing performance, and much more. Realize the true potential of your workforce. Harness the power of your people. HRWise, we partner for success.
Thank you so much for staying with us. Yes, so Dr. Jules, before the break, you were just about to go into your slide and explaining the different levels.
Yeah, I was saying that at the level of the individual, human resource development, creating of opportunity, training, and so on, does a lot for mobility. That's the capacity impact of it. So if, for example, I join a company and I've just left school with my CXCs, or what people call my CXCs, because it's really called CSEC, and I get training on the job and so on, I am able to advance. So the more training and education I get, the more my capacity to do things increases.
Right.
And with that increase comes, for example, the other impact, the financial impact, the financial driver of that is that at the level of the individual is increased income earning, right? And I was saying earlier that, remember I said earlier that we've actually measured the differentials that exist between dropping out of school and having no certification to having a school living certification, to having CSEC, to having an associate degree, to having a degree, to having a postgraduate degree. At every stage, the differential is huge. It makes a difference. And if you measure the gap, the wider the educational gap is the wider the income gap. At the level of knowledge now, the knowledge differential, at the individual level, the skills and competencies is what makes a difference. So that the more skills and competencies you obtain as an individual, it's how your knowledge grows, right? And the knowledge therefore helps with income earning it as well as social mobility, economic mobility. At the level of the organization, what human resource development does within a firm, a company, an organization is to increase the agility of the firm. As the staff grow in competencies and knowledge and skills, the agility, the ability of that organization to adjust to new realities, to changing technologies, to new competitive challenges, that education, that capacity building makes a difference.
Yeah.
Now, how does that translate to their financial bottom line is increased profitability, because if you're more agile, you can be more competitive, you can be more efficient, more cost effective, your profitability increases. Now, what that does to the knowledge component, the knowledge that, because knowledge is now considered a factor of production. Before in economics they told you the factors of production are land, labor, and capital.
Yeah.
Now knowledge is a factor of production, because the knowledge that resides in a company is in fact part of its asset base, although we've never recognized it till now to be such, right? And you can think of any company. I mean, think of any factory, for example. Let's just say a soft drinks factory, like Diboulet and Company. Their knowledge of the production process of how you produce soft drinks, the chemistry of that process and so on, that knowledge, that scientific knowledge is part of the asset base of that company. And to the extent that you engage and invest in human resource development, you train your chemists, you train your mixers, the people who operate your machinery, you invest in new technology, and with the new technology and new knowledge requirements to effectively run that technology, you are expanding your knowledge driver, right? And that also helps to increase your profitability as well as your agility. Now, at the level of the industry as a whole, think the banana industry. As farmers are trained, Black Cicatura, you train your farmers, they understand how to manage diseases, how to plant more effectively, the cycles of planting, the inputs, the fertilizers, when to put what. As that knowledge, as you develop that capacity within the industry as a whole, the industry becomes more competitive. So it's no longer just an individual firm being competitive, it's about the industry becoming competitive. And then now, in terms of the financial thing, then the industry as a whole is more profitable. And that's what happened with bananas is a good example of that. Remember, in the heyday of bananas, we had the Winban Research Center in the Mabwea Valley. And what that did was to do the research to help farmers to create knowledge that would make the production of the bananas more profitable, more productive, and more efficient. What that knowledge driver does is to help the industry now become transformational, because the knowledge is no longer about just knowledge of how to do things, but also how to transform things, how to make it more effective. Innovation and all of that becomes part of it. Now, if you take all of that up to the level of the country as a whole, imagine if St Lucia were to drive knowledge and human resource development in that way, as it percolates from the individual up to the industry to embrace all industries, all areas of the economy. You're going to find that the country as a whole, our economy as a whole, becomes more competitive. And the financial driver for that is that our gross national product, which is the sum of all what we produce in the country, goes up exponentially, right? And then now, intellectual capital of the society as a whole increases, right? There's knowledge gain, there's capital growth coming from that intellectual input. And I mean, this is a construct that I've developed when I was at CXC to help people understand the importance of that value. That work was done in 2011.
So when can we expect to see some drastic changes, Dr. Jules, at the national level?
Well, that's beyond my capacity, beyond my pay grade. I'm just a toiler in the vineyard, and I give my advice, and I do whatever I can to drive the process.
Do you think that we will see some changes soon?
We have made changes have been made. The good news is that, you know, that's a totally different sphere, but the season of hurricanes we just came through was a real moment of change, I think, for certainly for the OECS, because of the number of countries that were hit and the severe impact of those storms. And now, right now, some of the work I am helping to spearhead is to look at the big picture transformations that need to happen in the Caribbean in order to make us climate resilient, the world's first climate resilient country. And I can tell you, climate resilience is not just about building back better and stronger, like putting our electricity lines on the ground and having stronger roofs and new building codes and so on. It's also about human resource capacity. Dominica, for example, is going to require hundreds of workers. The more workers they can get, the faster they'll be able to rebuild.
Right.
But who are these workers going to be? You can't take somebody coming off a farm or a youth who drop out of school showing up in Dominica and saying, I'm a builder. Right? Especially if we're talking about building now to Cat 5 standards. You need a builder who understands, if I'm mixing concrete, how to mix that concrete so come a hurricane or an earthquake, it can have the structural integrity to withstand it. So we're now talking about what changes we need to do in the Caribbean vocational qualifications, even changes in industry. Maybe in the near future, ideally, and that's my personal view, I think that everybody working in the construction sector, from basic entry level right up, should be certified for the level at which they operate. And that certification must include an awareness of the techniques, the technologies, the skills required to build to the level of a Cat 5.
All right, so Dr. Jules, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this chat with me. I think it has been an absolutely educational discussion, I must admit. And you know it's always a pleasure talking to you. So thank you so much for stopping by the office.
You're welcome.
Thank you, thank you. All right, well, this takes us to the end of yet another episode of The Office, where our door is always open. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Ooh yeah, oh yeah. There's no place I'd rather be but home. Home is where the heart is. Open up your heart and you will see the black, the white, the love of our people, surrounded by Caribbean sea. Wake up to the sunrise with a heart of gold. See the sunshine, a place where there's only harmony and unity. I know that it's the only place for me, yeah. Near or far, no matter where I am, whether it's in the sky, on the land, ocean, I'm coming home. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Over the mountains, across the seas, sweet St Lucia, I can't wait to see. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. I can see it in your eyes. I can feel it in my soul. Now let me see you represent. Raise your flag up in the sky and say, oh, oh, oh. And if you're feeling all the vibes, raise your flag up in the sky and say, oh.
This is Choice TV, your prime time leader.